What's good, YouTube? It's your boy, Blue Blood Sports TV, back at y'all with another one. So, 2-division world champion, Puerto Rican superstar boxer, Danny Swift Garcia, 36 wins, 3 losses, no draws. Danny Garcia has 21 wins by way of knockout, 34 years of age, 5'8", with a 68-inch arm reach. With that said, Danny Garcia, he's going into a comeback fight, which is scheduled to take place in July, as Danny Garcia is going to take on Jose Benavidez Jr. In his first outing at junior middleweight at 154, right? Danny Garcia has not been in the ring since December 5th of 2020, when he took on and lost to now undefeated unified 3-belt welterweight world champion superstar boxer, who is widely considered by many to be top 2 best pound-for-pound fighters in the world, in Errol the True Spence Jr. Errol Spence Jr. is 28 wins, no loss, and no draw. 22 big wins by way of knockout. He is 32 years of age, 5'9.5" with a 72-inch arm reach. That took place December 5th of 2020. So Danny Garcia, he's been out the ring for 2 years. So it looks like July marks the date that he'll come back and he'll face off against Jose Benavidez Jr. With that said, Danny Garcia, he weighed in on what's being considered the biggest fight in the sport of boxing between former foe Errol Spence and undefeated 3-division world champion, former junior welterweight undisputed world champion, currently the reigning WBO World Boxing Organization welterweight world champion, who is widely considered by many to be the #1 best pound-for-pound fighter in the world, in Terence Crawford. 38 wins, no loss, and no draw. 29 big wins by way of knockout. He's 5'8" with a 74-inch arm reach at 34 years of age. With that said, Danny Garcia, he fought Terence Crawford in the amateurs. He obviously fought Errol Spence in the pros. Terence Crawford, Errol Spence make for the biggest fight in the sport of boxing. And so, it's the most anticipated fight. And so, interesting, Danny Garcia, he says that he feels like Terence Crawford is going to have a hard time hurting Errol Spence, because he feels like Errol Spence is a natural middleweight, 160-pounder, that's campaigning at welterweight. So he said he's a middleweight and a welterweight body, and the night of the fight, when he rehydrates, he's going to be a full middleweight when he fights Terence Crawford, who we know started his career at 130, 135, and moved up to 147, not the natural bigger guy, right? So he feels like Terence Crawford is going to have a hard time hurting Errol Spence. He stated that Errol Spence absorbs, punches well from welterweights because he's naturally a middleweight. So he's saying that Errol Spence is a middleweight facing off against welterweights, right? And another interesting point he talked about was him facing off against 2-time junior middleweight world champion, who's currently the undisputed junior middleweight world champion superstar boxer, Jermell Charlo, 35 wins, 1 loss, 1 draw, 19 wins by way of knockout. He is 32 years of age, 6 feet tall with a 74-inch arm reach. So he stated that Jermell Charlo is a basic fighter. He's a basic boxer puncher, right? So he stated that there's no flash of flair, there's no awkward style to Jermell Charlo. He's just a basic boxer puncher, and he likes his chances against Jermell Charlo more so than he did when he fought against 2-time welterweight world champion superstar boxer Showtime Shawn Porter, and former unified welterweight world champion superstar boxer Keith one-time Thurman, and Errol Spence, right? He said those styles are awkward, they're hard to deal with, they're hard to prepare for. You can't prepare for a Shawn Porter, Errol Spence, or Keith Thurman. He said their styles are very difficult to prepare for. But when he looks at Jermell Charlo, he sees Jermell Charlo as a basic boxer puncher, and he likes his chances better at junior middleweight. Now, we know all his losses came at welterweight. Came against Shawn Porter, Keith Thurman, and Errol Spence, right? So he's stating that, he likes his chances much better against Jermell Charlo, which I think that, I think that Danny Garcia, I love Danny Garcia. I love his personality. I like his character, but I'm going to be honest. I feel like Danny Garcia is a little delusional when it comes to how he fared in those fights. Like he said, the difference in the fight between him and Errol Spence was the jab. You know, he thought it was a close fight. He felt like he landed just as much power punches, if not more. That it was even on the box rack, on CompuBox. It was even the power punches, and the difference was the jab and the activity of Errol Spence. The rounds that Danny Garcia won against Errol Spence were the rounds that Errol Spence took off. And that was Errol Spence coming off of a 14-month layoff after suffering that horrific car accident. And that was his first fight back, you know. So that version of Errol Spence, you know, he says that, you know, he don't feel like Errol Spence looked good in the fight. He don't feel like he looked good in the fight. He thought they both looked terrible. Well, not terrible, but they didn't look their best in the fight. And so it was just one of those fights where you had two champions facing off against each other, and the outcome was the outcome. That's what he stated, right? So he stated that the outcome was the outcome. You know, you had two champions facing off against each other, and it is what it is, right? And I have to disagree. You know, Errol Spence looked pretty good for a guy coming out for a horrific car accident that we saw him thrown from a car at 100 miles an hour that's tumbling down the street, and a 14-month layoff. And when you look at Danny Garcia's performance against Shawn Porter, yeah, it was entertaining. It was competitive, but I thought Shawn Porter clearly won the fight. And when you look at Danny Garcia's performance against Keith Thurman, I thought Keith Thurman let off the gas in the second half, and I thought Keith Thurman clearly won the fight, right? I don't think it was as close as people make it out to be. I think it was more so to do with them letting off the gas, more so what Danny Garcia did. And again, Danny Garcia tested their style is difficult to prepare for. As far as Errol Spence being a middleweight and hard for Terence Crawford has stopped 10 of his last 11 opponents. Terence Crawford, he stopped Danny Garcia's upcoming opponent, and Jose Benavidez Jr. He stopped him in their fight, right? So with that said, you know, Terence Crawford does have a lot of power, okay? Terence Crawford, is very skilled, has a very high ring IQ, has power in both hands. Terence Crawford is, a special fighter, right? And I do believe, Terence Crawford stopping Jose Benavidez in the manner he did. He found a way to get it done. Now, Danny Garcia is fighting him July 30th, Jose Benavidez, right? And I believe that, Terence Crawford can definitely hurt Errol Spence, right? I believe that, saying that Errol Spence is a middleweight and can absorb the punching power, I don't believe that, right? Because Yordenis Ugas was bigger than Errol Spence, and he's not the biggest puncher, no, but he definitely was bigger than Errol Spence, and he couldn't absorb what Errol Spence was dishing out. Errol Spence broke his ribs, his orbital bone, and his nose, right? But Errol Spence was taking Yordenis Ugas' punches, and he was bigger than him, right? Danny Garcia was absorbing, Errol Spence's punches. He didn't get hurt bad. He didn't get knocked down. None of those things occurred. So Errol Spence, he the knock on Errol Spence is he not as big of a puncher as Terence Crawford. He's not as versatile as Terence Crawford. I think that, again, like I said, I think that, people like to find a reason as to why they lost to Errol Spence, because he's perceived as basic and vanilla. And so you can't figure out how you losing to this guy. It's like Luka Doncic, right? In the NBA. He can't jump high. He's not fast. He's not the most, he don't look like the most skilled guy. He looks slow on the court, on the basketball court. But then you look up at the score box at the end, the box scores at the end, and the stat sheet, and he got a triple-double. He got 41 points and 12 rebounds and 11 assists and 3 steals. And you're like, when did that happen, right? And I think that that's the case when you look at Errol Spence. There's no flash and flare about Errol Spence. There's no overly blazing hand speed. You know, he's not one punch knockout power like Gervonta Tank Davis and Deontay Wilder. You know, it's accumulation, right? He just breaks you down and just out physicals you, right? He just wears you down, breaks you down, and just, you know, he just relentless with his approach, right? And so because of that, I feel like a lot of people, they can't understand and they can't accept they lost to a guy who's perceived as basic, vanilla. You have Sugar Ray Leonard. He picked Mikey Garcia to beat Errol Spence, 4-division world champion Mexican superstar boxer. He picked Mikey Garcia simply because he was Mikey and would outbox Errol Spence. Right now, you have James Toney, a legend, an icon, a Hall of Famer. And he picked Terence Crawford to beat Errol Spence simply because Errol Spence is not versatile. He's basic, and he said that he'd be lucky, that being Errol Spence, to get to the 6th round. You know, Roy Jones said you need to see more from Errol Spence. What more do you need to see? Antonio Tarver, he's not versatile, right? It's like nobody can accept that he wears a hard hat and brings his lunch pail. He's fundamentally sound. He's the Tim Duncan of boxing, right? When Tim Duncan was in the NBA, you know, Kevin Garnett and Tim Duncan were rivals, and you couldn't mention Tim Duncan without Kevin Garnett. But Kevin Garnett have all the flash and the flair, right? He got the dunks, he got the shoot the threes, he's yelling, he's screaming, he got the energy, you know, he's running up the court, he's more athletic, he's explosive, right? And then you have Tim Duncan that's coming up the court. He's not screaming. He's shooting the ball off the backboard. Just bank shots, basic turnaround hooks, back you down slowly, turn around, put the ball in the hoop. He'll dunk it every now and then. He's not lifting up off the rim. He's not yelling when he's dunking. You know, it's not a flashy dunk, not a power dunk. He's just dunking it just to score the basket. But then you look at the stat sheet, and Tim Duncan got 5 championships. Is a part of a dynasty. Tim Duncan is considered to be the best power forward in the history of the sport of the NBA. And Kevin Garnett has 1 championship, right? He's a great all-time NBA great, but he's not considered the best power forward. You understand? So at the end of the day, everybody is attracted to movement. You're attracted to movement, and all the movement and the flash and the flare and the dunks and the yelling and the energy from Kevin Garnett, it attracts more people. Tim Duncan, basic, quiet, bank shot, just get the job done. Same effectiveness, if not more. And that's the problem with Errol Spence. You see, he brings his hard hat, his lunch pail, he pressing you, he's physical, he's a southpaw, he's fundamentally sound, he ain't yelling at the cameras, he ain't flashing flare. At the end of the fight, you may see him flex and yell, but that's about it. That's about all, right? And then when he's doing interviews, there's not a bunch of, you know, he's very cool, calm, and collective. He's not downplaying anybody, you know, and so I believe that he gets dismissed because of that. And as far as him being a middleweight, no, he's not a middleweight. You ever see Errol Spence? Now Errol Spence, I don't debate that he's a big welterweight, but he's not a middleweight. 160 pounder, no. You ever see Errol Spence next to Jermell and Jermell Charlo? Jermell Charlo is a middleweight, and Jermell Charlo is a junior middleweight, and they're clearly bigger than Errol Spence by far. The problem is today's time is that Errol Spence is a natural welterweight, and Danny Garcia is a 35, 40 pounder coming up. Sean Porter is not in stature, is 5'6", 5'7", 68-inch arm reach, 69-inch arm reach, not very tall, his stature. So he don't come across as a natural welterweight. Terence Crawford, 130, 135. He's not a natural welterweight, right? Keith Thurman is a natural welterweight, but Keith Thurman's not the biggest guy in stature either, at 5'8", 5'7.5", 5'8". But, you know, he's just not a big guy, right? And so you saw your Dana Sugas, and again, Manny Pacquiao, 5'6", 5'5" with a 67-inch arm reach at welterweight. Kell Brook is a natural big welterweight, and you saw him and Errol Spence in the ring together. And your Dana Sugas is a natural welterweight. They're not middleweights. They're natural welterweights. As far as Errol Spence he's durable like Danny Garcia. It's not that he's a middleweight and absorb punches. Danny Garcia is a durable fighter. We've seen Errol Spence hurt before in his career, right? And so Terence Crawford definitely has power. He stopped Jose Benavidez Jr. back in October 2018 in the 12th round of that fight. He stopped him in the 12th round. It was a fight where he had to figure it out. It was a tough fight, but he ended up figuring it out and he got the job done, period. So with that said, I disagree with Danny Garcia. Errol Spence is not a natural middleweight that absorbs punches. He's just a durable, natural welterweight that's fundamentally sound and gets the job done. So can't wait to see the announcement for Terence Crawford. Danny Garcia also said that he believes Terence Crawford and Errol Spence going to fight in October. I've heard the same thing. So hopefully it gets done. But that's all I got for y'all. Make sure you hit the like button. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let me know what y'all think. Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Blue, Blue Blood Sports TV. Hate, like, comment, and subscribe. You haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. Hit the bell icon to get all the new notifications. Follow me on Instagram at Blue Blood Sports TV. All one word. Y'all already know what it is. Shout out to the entire LDBC. Shout out to New Media. Shout out to Black Media Row. Make sure you like and share these videos. That's all I got for y'all. Peace.